You are losing power and you do not even know it. Every snide comment lands. Every dismissive tone stings. Every person who tests your patience gets exactly what they want, a reaction. And you hand it to them freely, like it costs you nothing. It costs you everything. Machiavelli did not write The Prince as a guide to cruelty. He wrote it as a surgical map of human nature, cold, honest, unforgiving. And the first truth on that map is this: the man who cannot govern his own emotions cannot govern anything else. Not his career, not his relationships, not his life. You are being governed right now. Someone else is holding the controls and you put them there yourself. Think about the last time someone provoked you. A passive-aggressive co-worker. A family member who knows exactly which buttons to press. A stranger online who said something designed to detonate you. You reacted. Your heart rate spiked. Your thoughts scattered. Your words came out wrong or too fast or too sharp. And afterward, in that hollow silence, you felt something worse than anger. You felt ashamed, because somewhere underneath the reaction, you knew that was a test, and you failed it. This is not a character flaw. This is a strategic error. Emotional reactivity is not evidence of passion or authenticity. It is evidence of an undefended perimeter. It is a gap in your psychological armor that anyone with enough social cunning can walk straight through. And the world is full of people who will walk through it, not because they are evil, but because human nature rewards those who trigger reactions and punishes those who cannot suppress them. That ends today. This video is your training manual for emotional invincibility, not emotional suppression. That is a different trap, and we will talk about it. Not fake calm, that fools no one. Real, rooted, unshakable emotional sovereignty. The kind that makes provocateurs feel foolish. The kind that makes power brokers take notice. The kind that history's most formidable minds built deliberately, principle by principle. If this channel is the kind of content that makes you think differently about yourself and the world, subscribe right now. There are no motivational platitudes here, only cold strategy. Here is what you will learn today. Stay until that final principle. It will change how you move through the world permanently. Right now, your nervous system is running ancient threat detection software on a modern social landscape. It cannot tell the difference between a predator in the dark and a colleague who spoke to you dismissively in a meeting. Both trigger the same cascade. Cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your prefrontal cortex goes partially offline. Your vision narrows. Your words become weapons loaded by reflex rather than intention. This is called an amygdala hijack. The emotional brain seizes the controls before the rational brain can weigh the situation. And for a fraction of a second, sometimes longer, you are not a thinking agent. You are a reactive animal in a business suit. Here is what makes this strategically devastating. The person provoking you often knows this happens. They may not know about neuroscience, but they have tested the system empirically. They poked you once, you reacted, and their brain filed that away. This works on him. This works on her. Now they have a remote control they can pick up whenever the situation calls for it. Machiavelli wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men around him. But look deeper. Estimate the intelligence of any person by looking at who controls their emotional state. If strangers and rivals hold that power, the ruler is already conquered. So here is your first tactical directive. Learn your personal hijack signature. Everyone has one. For some people, it is disrespect, someone talking over you, dismissing your ideas, using a certain tone. For others, it is abandonment cues, someone going cold, withdrawing attention, becoming distant. For others, it is injustice triggers, seeing the rules violated, watching hypocrisy operate unpunished. You have a specific profile. You need to know it with the precision of a general who has mapped his own vulnerabilities before the enemy does. This week, do this exercise. Every time you feel a reactive spike, that heat behind the eyes, that tightening in the chest, that urge to say something sharp, write it down, the trigger, the physical sensation, the thought that followed. Do this for 7 days. By the end of that week, you will have a map of your psychological perimeter. Every gap, every weak point, every undefended gate. Because you cannot defend what you have not surveyed. And the moment you have that map, your attackers lose their most important advantage, information asymmetry. They knew where you were vulnerable before you did. Now you know first. The next principle goes deeper. Because knowing your triggers is only half the battle. What you do in the half second after the trigger fires, that is where sovereignty is actually won or lost. There is a trap that destroys men and women who are trying to become emotionally strong. They confuse suppression with detachment, and the confusion is lethal. Suppression says, push it down, lock it away, show nothing. And on the surface, it looks like strength. The stone face, the controlled voice, the person who never visibly reacts. But inside, suppression is a pressure cooker on a slow burn. What goes down does not disappear. It compresses, it waits, and it explodes at the worst possible moment, in a situation where the stakes are highest, with the people who matter most, at a time when your composure was the only thing standing between you and catastrophe. Suppression is not emotional mastery. Suppression is delayed emotional catastrophe. True detachment is entirely different. It does not push the emotion down. It changes your relationship to the emotion at the moment it arises. You observe it instead of becoming it. You feel the heat and you watch it without adding fuel. You register the sensation and you do not narrate a story on top of it. The Stoics understood this with clinical precision. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, commander of legions, a man who governed the most complex political environment in the ancient world, wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He did not ignore outside events. He said, recognize the boundary of your actual jurisdiction. The event is outside that boundary. Your interpretation of the event is inside it. This is the detachment protocol. 3 steps. Execute them in sequence every time provocation fires. Step 1. Name the sensation, physically, not emotionally. Do not think, I am angry. Think, there is heat in my chest. Do not think, I am being disrespected. Think, there is a tightening in my jaw. This is not a word game. Neurologically, labeling a physical sensation activates the prefrontal cortex and dampens amygdala firing. You are literally rewiring the hijack in real time. Step 2. Insert a question between the trigger and the response. Not a rhetorical question, a strategic one. Ask yourself this: what does this person want to happen right now? That question alone shifts you from prey to analyst. The prey reacts. The analyst evaluates. The moment you ask what the provocateur wants, you are already operating from a different psychological altitude. Step 3. Delay the response by exactly 1 breath. Not a theatrical pause. 1 long, slow, deliberate breath while your prefrontal cortex comes fully back online. Researchers at Stanford found that a single controlled exhale reduces cortisol response measurably. 1 breath. That is the distance between a reaction and a decision. Train this protocol in low-stakes situations first. The grocery store, the traffic jam, the minor social friction of daily life. You are building a neural pathway. Every time you execute the protocol under mild pressure, you are widening the road so that under extreme pressure, the route is already carved. Because when the real test comes, and it will come, you will not have time to think. You will only have what you have already built. And the next principle is about what happens after you have achieved that initial detachment. Because composure without depth is just a mask, and masks crack. What you need is something that goes all the way down. Ask yourself this question honestly. Why does certain provocation hurt while other provocation slides off you completely? A stranger insults your height and you feel nothing. A friend makes a comment about your competence and you carry it for 3 days. The difference is not the severity of the attack. The difference is the territory the attack landed on. Some ground inside you is defended. Other grounds are raw, contested, unresolved. and provocateurs, consciously or not, sniff out the raw ground like heat-seeking instruments. The psychological term for this is the covert contract. You have a set of beliefs about yourself that you have not consciously examined but that operate as laws beneath the surface. Laws like, I must be seen as competent to have value, I must be safe, I must not show weakness or I will be abandoned. These are not your consciously chosen values, they are old operating systems written before you had the cognitive tools to evaluate them. And here is the devastating part, they are not yours. They were installed by parents, by early social environments, by formative moments of humiliation or rejection that your nervous system interpreted as survival data. You did not choose them, but you are running on them. The covert contract creates a specific vulnerability. When someone's provocation aligns with one of your hidden beliefs, confirms the fear you carry about yourself, it does not just sting, it resonates. It activates not just the present moment, but every moment before it where that same fear was alive. The provocation is an ember, the covert contract is the fuel, and the reaction is the fire. Strip out the fuel, and the ember dies on contact. Machiavelli observed, whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. Change your internal conduct first. Audit the covert contracts you are operating on and examine each one with cold rationality. Here is how. Write this down. Identify the 3 comments that have stung you most in the last year. Not the loudest, the ones that lodged deepest. For each one, ask, what would I have to believe about myself for this comment to have power? That belief is a covert contract. Now ask, is this belief factually true? Or is it an old fear masquerading as a law? Most of the time, almost all of the time, it is a fear, not a fact. A narrative inherited from an earlier, more vulnerable version of you who needed it for protection and has not received the memo that you have grown since then. When you dissolve the covert contract, the provocation has no anchor point. It looks for somewhere to grip and finds nothing. And you will feel this shift physically. The first time it happens, a comment that used to ignite you will arrive and simply pass through. No heat, no hook, nothing. That is not numbness. That is sovereignty. The next principle is about the external expression of that sovereignty, because once the internal architecture is rebuilt, your silence becomes a different kind of weapon entirely. Most people are terrified of silence. They are conditioned to interpret it as absence of approval, absence of engagement, absence of safety. And because they fear it, they rush to fill it. They over-explain, they justify, they defend, they justify, they defend, they escalate. They perform for an audience that is not always watching as closely as they imagine. You have done this. So has every reactive person who has ever lost an argument they should have won simply by speaking too soon. The person who controls the silence controls the frame of every interaction. Think about this surgically. When someone provokes you and you respond immediately, you have confirmed the attack landed. You have given them data. You have shown them the gap in your armor and handed them a detailed map. Your words, no matter how sharp, no matter how clever, signaled that their targeting system worked. Now consider the alternative. Someone provokes you. You pause. You look at them. Not with hostility, with evaluation, as if you are deciding whether this moment is worth your energy, and the answer appears to be not yet. You say nothing, or you say very little, a question, a 3-word acknowledgement, then you move on. What just happened in their nervous system? Uncertainty, disorientation. The social script they had loaded did not run. The expected reaction did not arrive. And the human brain, when it encounters an unexpected gap in social feedback, does something powerful and uncontrollable. It starts to fill that gap with anxiety. They begin to wonder, did that not affect him? Did she not hear me? Does he not care? Do I not matter here? Your silence has transferred the psychological pressure from you back to them. You did not retaliate. You did not absorb. You simply redirected the entire energetic weight of the attack using nothing but stillness. Sun Tzu, whose strategic philosophy Machiavelli studied and echoed, wrote, "Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting." Apply this to the social arena. The supreme response to provocation is not the perfect comeback. It is the response that requires no comeback at all. Here are your tactical directives for weaponized silence. First, train your tolerance for social discomfort by deliberately pausing before responding in low-stakes conversations, not in a way that seems strange, but by a count of 2 or 3 before you speak. This reconditions your baseline. Second, when provocation arrives, ask one clarifying question instead of defending. What do you mean by that? 4 words that neutralize hostility while gathering information. Third, practice the flat affect response, a brief neutral acknowledgement that neither validates nor combats. Interesting. Then redirect, give nothing, take nothing, move on. The provocateur feeds on reaction. Positive or negative, it does not matter. They need a response to confirm their relevance, their power, their ability to affect you. Silence starves the system, and a starved system shuts down. But here is the deeper truth that the next principle addresses. Some of your most dangerous reactions do not come from external attacks at all. They come from the parts of yourself you have buried and refused to examine. Those buried parts are grenades with the pins already pulled. This is the principle most people skip because it is the most uncomfortable, which means it is the most important. The psychologist Carl Jung introduced the concept of the shadow, the part of the psyche that contains everything you have rejected, suppressed, and refused to acknowledge about yourself. Not just the dark qualities. Everything you were taught was unacceptable. The anger you were told was dangerous. The ambition you were told was selfish. The vulnerability you were told was weak. The desires you were told were shameful. You did not eliminate these qualities by suppressing them. You drive them underground, where they operate without your consent, trigger without your permission, and react before your conscious mind has a chance to intervene. Here is how this ambushes you. Someone accuses you of being selfish. If that accusation has no shadow resonance, if your relationship with your own self-interest is clean, examined, conscious, the word bounces off. But if selfishness is a quality you have suppressed, a quality you have spent years denying, a quality your shadow has locked in a room you never open, that word detonates because some part of you believes it, and that part has been waiting for confirmation. Provocateurs who are socially intelligent, and many are, will intuit your shadow material within a few interactions. They will test several attack vectors until they find the one that produces a reliable reaction. Then they will use it repeatedly because it works. Your unexamined shadow is their tactical manual. Machiavelli wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. To be a fox, you must know the terrain, and the most treacherous terrain is always inside." Shadow integration is not therapy speak. It is a strategic operation. Here is the field protocol. Take the quality that most activates your defensiveness when someone accuses you of it, not the qualities you know you have and own, the ones that make you want to immediately and forcefully deny. I am not controlling. I am not weak. I am not selfish. I am not arrogant. Those denials are the signal flares. Sit with the quality, not to confirm it, to examine it. Ask, is there any version of this quality operating in me that I have not acknowledged? You do not have to confess it publicly. You do not have to make it your identity. You simply have to make it conscious. Because the moment a quality moves from the unconscious shadow into conscious awareness, it loses its detonation capability. You can see it coming. You can evaluate the accusation rationally instead of reacting from a place of hidden shame. This is the most sophisticated emotional intelligence work available. It is also the work that produces the most dramatic and permanent results. People who have done deep shadow integration are often described by others as having a quality that is difficult to name, a groundedness, an absence of defensiveness, a strange kind of calm authority. What observers are sensing is the absence of shadow triggers. There is nothing to detonate. The ambush has been diffused from the inside. Your emotional sovereignty is not built only by managing your external responses. It is built by conducting relentless internal reconnaissance until there is nothing left to hide, and therefore nothing left to weaponize against you. The next principle takes everything you have built internally and translates it into something the external world can see and feel. You have felt this in the presence of certain people, not dominance, not aggression. Something quieter and more unnerving. A person who seems genuinely unbothered by the social friction around them, who does not perform composure. They simply have it. Who does not need the room's approval, does not lean into conversations with desperate energy, does not react to social turbulence. You instinctively recalibrate around that person. You choose your words more carefully. You sense that your usual social maneuvers will not work. You feel, though you cannot say why, that this person is operating from a different set of rules, rules that give them an altitude advantage over almost everyone in the room. That is a strategic presence, and it is not a personality trait. It is a trained output of everything we have discussed so far: the rewired nervous system, the detachment protocol, the dissolved covert contracts, the weaponized silence, the integrated shadow. When all of those components are functioning, they produce a visible, palpable quality that communicates without words: I cannot be destabilized. This is your third call to action. If you are working through these principles seriously, if you are applying them, not just watching, leave a comment right now with the word sovereign, INI, so this algorithm knows this content deserves to reach the people who need it. And so you can measure, when you come back to this video in 6 months, whether your relationship with that word has changed. Now, how do you build strategic presence deliberately rather than waiting for it to emerge? Presence is built through behavioral congruence. This means your external signals must match your internal state, and your internal state must be genuinely stable, not performed. The body does not lie efficiently. Forced composure leaks. A tight jaw says something the words do not. Rapid eye movement says something the neutral tone does not. Shallow breathing says something the controlled voice does not. This is why the internal work is not optional. Without it, you are building a facade. Facades fall under pressure, which is precisely when you need them most. But here are the behavioral practices that reinforce and accelerate the development of genuine presence. First, slow every physical movement by 20% in high-tension situations. Not in a way that reads as sedated, with the deliberateness of someone who has all the time they need. Speed signals anxiety. Deliberate movement signals certainty. Second, reduce your linguistic hedging. Eliminate I think, I feel like, maybe, kind of, I'm not sure, but. Make declarative statements. Offer information directly. Let silence carry the weight instead of qualifying words. Third, stop seeking confirmation after you speak. The instinct to scan the room for validation after making a statement. That micro-behavior broadcasts insecurity to everyone trained to read social signals. Say what you mean, then stop. Let it stand. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire and faced external threats that would shatter most modern minds. He wrote, "Never esteem anything as an advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." Self-respect is not a feeling, it is a practice. It is built through behavioral repetition, acting in alignment with your values under pressure, especially when it costs you something. Every time you execute the detachment protocol under real pressure, your self-respect compounds. Every time you hold silence when the impulse to react is screaming, your self-respect compounds. Every time you dissolve a covert contract instead of defending it, your self-respect compounds. And over time, weeks, months, years of this practice, strategic presence is not something you have to perform. It is something you have become, the final principle now. And I told you at the beginning this one would change how you move through the world permanently. I meant it. Everything so far has been tactical. responses to specific provocations, tools for specific moments of pressure. Those tools are real and they work. But tactics without architecture eventually fail. A soldier with good reflexes still loses if the fortress has no walls. The long-term psychological fortress is built on 3 pillars. Miss any one of them and the structure will eventually collapse under sustained pressure. The first pillar is identity clarity. The most emotionally destabilized people in the world share one characteristic. They do not have a clear, examined, owned definition of who they are that exists independently of external feedback. Their sense of self is assembled from what other people have reflected back to them, which means any strong contrary signal, any insult, dismissal, or provocation threatens the entire structure because the structure is built on borrowed material. Identity clarity is the work of sitting with the questions most people avoid. What do you actually value when no one is watching and there is no social reward for the answer? What kind of person do you want to be under pressure, not just in comfort? What are your non-negotiables, the lines you will not cross regardless of social consequence? When you have answered these questions honestly and repeatedly over time, you have laid a foundation that is yours, not borrowed, not conditional, not dependent on external validation to remain standing. When provocation comes, and it will, it hits the foundation and finds bedrock. There is nowhere to go. The second pillar is purpose alignment. Reactive people are reactive in part because they have enormous stores of undeployed energy. Energy that has no direction finds its direction in reactivity. The person who is genuinely, urgently, consumingly focused on a significant purpose does not have the spare bandwidth for sustained emotional reaction. Not because they have suppressed the emotion, but because the purpose is the dominant operating system and it simply runs with higher priority. Machiavelli understood this not just philosophically, but practically. He wrote his greatest works while in political exile, stripped of power under house arrest. The external conditions were humiliating. The internal orientation was entirely focused on the work. The work was the fortress. Find your work. Go deep into it. Let it be the environment you return to after every social encounter, the place where your energy has a direction that matters more than the friction you just walked through. The third pillar is community calibration. You are the average of the emotional environments you inhabit. This is not metaphor, it is neuroscience. Social environments have measurable effects on cortisol levels, emotional baseline, and reactive threshold. You can do all of this internal work and then spend 8 hours a day in an environment that systematically undermines it through chronic low-grade provocation, emotional volatility, and reward systems that incentivize reactivity. Examine your environments with surgical honesty. Which relationships consistently leave you more destabilized than when you arrived? Which social contexts require you to spend your most valuable emotional resources just maintaining a baseline? You do not have to burn these connections, but you do need to see them clearly and make conscious decisions about the terms on which you engage. Reduce exposure where possible. Establish explicit internal protocols for managing unavoidable high-friction environments, and aggressively seek environments where emotional intelligence is modeled, rewarded, and normalized. These 3 pillars, identity clarity, purpose alignment, community calibration, are not the work of a week. They are the work of a life, but they compound in the same way that interest compounds. Slowly, then dramatically. The person who begins this work today will barely recognize themselves in 3 years, not because they will have changed everything, but because they will have built something underneath everything that was never there before. Here is what you came for. Here is the synthesis. You started this video as a person who reacts. Every day, multiple times a day, your emotional state is being written by external events and other people's behavior. You hand the pen over automatically, without thought, without consent. And the cost is not just the individual moments of lost composure. The cost is cumulative. The cost is the steady erosion of your self-respect every time you react when you mean to respond. The cost is the opportunities that close because you are read as volatile. The cost is the relationships that calcified because you could not hold your ground without heat. The cost is the version of yourself you know you could be: stable, clear, formidable, watching you from a distance, waiting for you to start the work. That work is now mapped. 7 principles, not abstract philosophy, operational protocols you can execute beginning today. The nervous system reconnaissance, the detachment protocol, the covert contract audit, the weaponization of silence, the shadow integration, the development of strategic presence, the construction of the fortress. But here is what I need you to understand about inaction. The cost of not doing this work does not stay the same. It grows. Every year you operate on unexamined covert contracts. Those contracts become more deeply wired. Every year you suppress rather than detach. The pressure builds higher. Every year you hand your emotional state to whoever happens to provoke you. The habit deepens and the recovery time shortens. There is no neutral position here. You are either building or you are eroding. There is no maintenance mode in psychological development. The world applies pressure constantly, automatically, without malice or intent. And that pressure either sculpts you or it wears you down, depending entirely on whether you have built the architecture to use it. The choice is not between comfort and discomfort. You are already uncomfortable. That discomfort is why you are watching this video. The choice is between the discomfort of growth and the discomfort of stagnation. One of those discomforts builds something, the other one just hurts. If this video gave you a single principle you will actually use, subscribe, not to be polite, because there is a library of this content here, and the people who study it consistently are the ones who report the most significant and lasting changes in how they carry themselves. The algorithm rewards engagement. Your subscription is a signal that this content deserves to reach the person who needs it tonight, who does not know this channel exists yet. And now, the comment prompt that matters. Think of the single most significant transformation you are committing to after watching this video. Is it the detachment protocol, the covert contract audit, the shadow integration work? Identify it. Then write "I am building" in the comments below, followed by the one word that names what you are constructing. I am building presence. I am building clarity. I am building sovereignty. Let this comment section become a record of people who watched and chose to begin, not to perform growth, to mark it, to create a public commitment that your future self will hold you to. You came here reactive. You leave here with a map. Now build.